I was 27 years old when I sat in a cold conference room in Seattle and watched my parents try to steal $45 million from me. My grandparents had passed away 3 weeks earlier. Today was the reading of their will. I sat quietly on one side of the long wooden table while my parents, Victor and Diane Kensington, sat across from me with their lawyer. My older brother Caleb was also there, looking bored, as if this was just another family meeting. I already knew what was coming. My grandparents had told me months ago what they planned to do. The lawyer, an older man with white hair, cleared his throat and began reading. "To my granddaughter, Leela Kensington," he read, "I leave my entire estate, including all liquid assets, properties, and investments, totaling approximately $45 million. The room went completely silent. My mother's face turned pale. My father's hands clenched into fists on the table. Caleb sat up straight, suddenly interested. My father was the first to speak. "That can't be right," he said, his voice tight. "There must be some mistake. Edward and Margaret would never leave everything to her. We're their only son. This is our family's money." The lawyer looked at him calmly over his glasses. "There is no mistake, Mr. Kensington. Your parents were very clear in their instructions. They left everything to Leela because, in their words, she was the only one who treated us like family instead of an ATM. My mother let out a sharp, bitter laugh. "This is ridiculous," she said, turning to me. "Leela, you manipulated them. You spent all that time with them in their final years just to get their money. You turned them against us." I stayed calm. I had expected this reaction. "I didn't manipulate anyone. I visited them because they were lonely. You and Dad only called when you needed something. Grandpa even told me he was disappointed in how you treated them." My father slammed his hand on the table. "Don't you dare speak about my father like that," he snapped. "That money belongs to this family. You're going to sign it over to us, right now." I looked at him. "No," I said, "I'm not." My mother leaned forward, her voice turning soft and manipulative, the tone she used whenever she wanted something. "Leela, sweetheart, be reasonable. Your father's business is struggling. We have debts. This money could save everything we've built. You don't even need this much. What are you going to do with $45 million? I looked at both of them. "I'm keeping it," I said, "because it's mine. Grandpa and Grandma left it to me, and after the way you've treated me my entire life, I don't owe you anything." My father's face turned red with anger. "You ungrateful little brat. After everything we did for you, we raised you, we gave you a roof over your head, and this is how you repay us?" I stood up slowly. You gave me a roof," I said, "but you also made me feel like I was never good enough. You compared me to Caleb every single day. You only cared about me when it was convenient for you. So no, Dad, I'm not giving you the money." I picked up my bag and walked toward the door. My mother's voice followed me, sharp and cold. "You're going to regret this, Leela. Mark my words." I didn't turn around, but deep down, I already knew this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning.
If you've ever had your own family try to take what was rightfully yours just because they felt entitled to it, drop a comment right now and tell me where you're watching from. I read every single one. I walked out of the lawyer's office with my heart pounding in my chest. The cold Seattle air hit my face as I stepped onto the sidewalk, but I barely felt it. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from the sheer anger boiling inside me. $45 million. My grandparents had left everything to me, and within minutes, my own parents had tried to take it away. I got into my car and sat there for a few moments, gripping the steering wheel. I could still hear my father's voice in my head. "You ungrateful little brat." My mother's manipulative tone. "This money could save everything we've built." They didn't care about me. They never had. They only cared about the money. I drove straight to my apartment and locked the door behind me. For the next 2 hours, I sat on the couch in complete silence, trying to process everything. My phone kept ringing. My mother, my father, even my brother, Caleb. I didn't answer any of them. Around 8 p.m., I finally picked up my phone and made the call I should have made the moment the will was read. I called a lawyer, not the same one who read the will, someone new, someone who specialized in estate and inheritance law. I found the name of a well-known firm in Seattle and scheduled an emergency meeting for the next morning. That night, I barely slept. The next day, I sat across from a sharp, no-nonsense lawyer named Miss Elena Vargas. She was in her early 40s, confident and direct. I told her everything: the will, my parents' reaction, and their demand that I hand over the money. She listened carefully, then leaned back in her chair. "Miss Kensington, your grandparents left the money to you. It's legally yours. However, your parents can still challenge the will in court. They can claim undue influence, lack of capacity, or even fraud. It's a common tactic in these situations." My stomach dropped. "So they can still try to take it?" I asked. "They can try, but if your grandparents were of sound mind when they made the will, and if everything was documented properly, their chances are very low. Still, they can drag this through court for years and make your life miserable." I clenched my fists. "What should I do?" I asked. "First, we secure the assets immediately. We move the money into accounts only you control. Second, we prepare for a possible legal battle. And third," she paused, "we document everything, every call, every message, every threat. If they try to pressure you, we'll have proof." I nodded. That same afternoon, we began the process of transferring the funds and properties into my name only. My grandparents had already made things easier by leaving clear instructions, but my parents were still listed as potential beneficiaries in some old documents. We had to clean everything up. By the end of the week, the money was safe, but my parents weren't done. They started calling again, this time with a different approach. My mother called first. "Lila, sweetheart," she said in that sweet, fake voice she used when she wanted something. "We've been thinking, maybe we were too harsh the other day. We're still your family. Why don't we sit down and talk like adults? We can work something out." I stayed calm. "There's nothing to work out, Mom. The money is mine. Grandpa and Grandma left it to me." She sighed dramatically. "You're being selfish. Your father's business is in trouble. Caleb has debts. We need this money to keep the family together. Are you really going to let everything fall apart just because you're angry?" I felt my blood boil. "I'm not angry," I said. "I'm finally seeing things clearly, and I'm not giving you a single cent." I hung up before she could respond. 2 days later, my father tried a different tactic. He showed up at my apartment unannounced. I opened the door and found him standing there with a folder in his hand. "Lila," he said, trying to sound calm, "we need to talk." I didn't invite him inside. "Say what you have to say here." He held up the folder. "This is a legal document. If you sign it, you agree to split the inheritance equally among the family. It's the fair thing to do. Your grandparents would have wanted this." I looked at him coldly. Grandpa and Grandma were very clear about what they wanted. They left everything to me because they knew you and Mom would waste it. I'm not signing anything. His face darkened. "You're making a big mistake," he said. "We can take this to court. We can prove that they weren't in their right mind when they changed the will. Do you really want to drag your grandparents' name through the mud?" That was the final straw. I stepped closer to him. "Go ahead," I said. "Take me to court. But know this, if you do,
I will make sure every single dirty secret about this family comes out. I have records. I have proof of how you treated Grandpa and Grandma. I have proof of how you covered up for Caleb's mistakes, and I'm not afraid to use it." My father's face turned red with anger. "You wouldn't dare." "Try me," I said. He stared at me for a long moment, then turned and walked away without another word. That night, I sat alone in my apartment and made a decision. I wasn't going to keep playing defense. If my parents wanted a war, I was going to make sure they understood exactly who they were fighting, because I was done being the quiet, obedient daughter. From now on, I was going to fight back, and I was going to win. The lawsuit arrived exactly 1 week later. I was sitting in my lawyer's office when Miss Vargas slid the thick envelope across the table toward me. Her expression was calm, but I could tell from the way she looked at me that this was serious. "They filed a formal challenge against the will. Your parents are claiming that your grandparents were not of sound mind when they changed it. They are also accusing you of exerting undue influence over them in their final years." I stared at the papers in front of me, feeling a strange mix of anger and disbelief. "They're actually doing it," I said quietly. "They're really trying to take everything through court?" Miss Vargas nodded. "Yes, and they're not doing it quietly either. They've already started telling people in their social circle that you manipulated your grandparents. Some of their friends have already reached out to me asking questions." I felt my jaw tighten. "They're trying to destroy my reputation before the case even starts." "Exactly," she replied. "This is a common tactic. They want to pressure you emotionally and socially so that you'll settle and give them a large portion of the money just to make it stop." I leaned back in my chair and stared at the ceiling for a few seconds. "What are my options?" I asked. Miss Vargas didn't sugarcoat anything. "We can fight this in court. We have strong documentation, medical records showing your grandparents were mentally sharp until the end, witness statements from their caregivers, and even letters they wrote to you. But court battles like this can take years and become very expensive in public." She paused before continuing. "Or we can go on the offensive." I looked at her. "What do you mean?" She leaned forward slightly. "Your parents are not as clean as they pretend to be. During our initial research, we found some questionable financial activities in your father's company over the past few years. If we dig deeper, we might find enough to countersue or at least force them into a much weaker position." I stayed quiet for a moment, thinking. For years, I had been the one defending myself. I had been the one trying to keep the peace. I had been the one who stayed quiet even when they treated me badly. Not anymore. "I want to fight," I said firmly, "but I don't want to just defend myself. I want them to understand that they made a mistake by coming after me." Ms. Vargas gave me a small, approving nod. "Then we'll prepare for war." Over the next 2 weeks, my life became a blur of meetings, document reviews, and strategy sessions. Ms. Vargas and her team dug deep into my parents' financial history. What they found was disturbing, but not surprising. My father had been involved in several shady real estate deals over the past 5 years. He had also been moving large sums of money through shell companies, something that looked a lot like tax evasion and money laundering. My mother had helped cover some of it by signing documents she clearly didn't understand. They weren't just greedy, they were also criminals. One evening, after another long meeting with my lawyer, I sat alone in my apartment and stared at the documents spread across my coffee table. My hands were shaking slightly. These people, the same people who raised me, had spent years lying, cheating, and stealing. And now they had the audacity to come after the one thing my grandparents had left me. I felt something shift inside me that night. The fear and hesitation I had been carrying for years slowly started to disappear. In its place came something colder and sharper: determination. I picked up my phone and called Miss Vargas. "I want to go on the offensive," I said. "I want them to feel what it's like to lose everything." She was quiet for a second, then replied, "Are you sure about this, Lila? Once we start down this road, there's no going back. Your relationship with your parents will likely be destroyed forever." I looked out the window at the rainy Seattle night. "They destroyed it the day they tried to steal from me," I said. "I'm done protecting them." Miss Vargas sighed softly. "All right, then we'll start building the case against them. But I need you to be prepared for what's coming. This won't be easy." "I know," I replied, "but I'm ready." After ending the call, I sat in silence for a long time. For the first time since this whole nightmare began, I didn't feel like a victim anymore. I felt like someone who was finally ready to fight back. And I had no intention of losing. The next 2 weeks were some of the most intense of my life. Miss Vargas and her team worked quickly. They gathered bank records, old property documents, and witness statements from former employees of my father's company. The more evidence they collected, the clearer it became my parents hadn't just been greedy. They had been systematically stealing and hiding money for years. One evening, I was sitting in Miss Vargas's office when she placed a thick file in front of me. "This is everything we have so far," she said. "Your father has been moving money through 3 different shell companies over the past 7 years. Your mother signed off on several of the transactions. If this goes to court, they could both face serious criminal charges, not just civil ones." I stared at the documents, feeling a strange emptiness in my chest. These were the same people who used to lecture me about responsibility and family values. "What happens now?" I asked. Miss Vargas leaned back in her chair. "Now we send them a message. We offer them one final chance to drop their case against you. In exchange, we won't hand over this evidence to the authorities. Yet." I looked up at her. "You want to blackmail them?" She shook her head. "No, I want to give them a choice. They can either walk away quietly and keep whatever dignity they have left, or they can continue fighting and risk going to prison. The decision should be theirs." I thought about it for a moment. "Do it," I said. 2 days later, my parents received the letter. According to Ms. Vargas, my father's lawyer called her within an hour of receiving it. He was furious, but also clearly nervous. My parents had 24 hours to respond. They didn't take the full 24 hours. At 11:47 p.m. that same night, my mother called me. I was lying in bed when her name appeared on my screen. For a second, I considered ignoring it, but something made me answer. "Lila," she said, her voice shaking with anger, "how dare you? How dare you threaten us like this?" I stayed calm. "I didn't threaten you, Mom. I gave you a choice. Drop the lawsuit or face the consequences of your own actions. You're trying to destroy your own family," she snapped. "Do you have any idea what this will do to your father's reputation, to our name?" I let out a short, bitter laugh. "Our name, Mom? You and Dad destroyed that name years ago. I'm just making sure the truth comes out." She was quiet for a few seconds. When she spoke again, her voice had changed. It was lower, colder. "You think you're so smart, don't you?" she said. "You think because you have some fancy lawyer now, you can control everything. But you're still the same naive little girl who used to beg for our attention. You have no idea what we're capable of." I felt a chill run down my spine, but I didn't let it show in my voice. "Try me," I said. "I'm not scared of you anymore." I hung up. The next morning, things escalated. My parents didn't just continue with the lawsuit, they went public with it. They gave an interview to a local business magazine, painting themselves as the heartbroken parents whose ungrateful daughter had stolen their inheritance. They claimed I had manipulated my grandparents and was now trying to blackmail them into silence. The article spread quickly. By afternoon, people I hadn't spoken to in years were messaging me. Some were supportive, others were judgmental. A few even accused me of being greedy and heartless. I sat in my apartment reading the comments under the article, feeling a mix of anger and exhaustion. They were still trying to control the narrative. But this time, I wasn't going to stay quiet. I called Ms. Vargas. I want to respond, I told her, publicly. She was quiet for a moment. Are you sure? She asked. Once you go public, there's no taking it back. Things will get very ugly. I'm sure, I said. I'm done letting them paint me as the villain. That evening, I sat down and wrote a statement. It was calm, factual, and direct. I didn't attack them personally. I simply laid out the truth that my grandparents had chosen to leave their money to me and that my parents were now trying to take it through lies and manipulation. Ms. Vargas reviewed it and helped me release it through her firm's official channels. Within hours, the story had shifted. People started questioning my parents' version of events. Some of their old business associates publicly distanced themselves. A few even reached out to me privately, offering support. For the first time since this began, I felt like I had some control. But my parents weren't finished. That same night, at almost midnight, my brother Caleb showed up at my apartment. I opened the door and found him standing there looking tired and frustrated. "Can I come in?" he asked. I hesitated, then stepped aside. He walked into my living room and stood there awkwardly for a few seconds before speaking. "Mom and Dad are losing it. They're talking about going to the media again. Dad even mentioned reaching out to some of his old contacts to put pressure on you." I crossed my arms. "And you're here to warn me, or to threaten me?" Caleb looked at me. "I'm here because I'm tired of this shit," he said bluntly. "I'm tired of watching them destroy what's left of this family, and I'm tired of being stuck in the middle." He ran a hand through his hair. "Look, I know I haven't been the best brother. I stayed quiet while they treated you like crap, but I'm not going to keep doing that. Not anymore." I studied him carefully. "What do you want, Caleb?" He looked me in the eye. "I want out," he said. "I want to help you. I have information about Dad's company, things even Mom doesn't know. If you're really going to fight them, I can help, but I need something in return." I raised an eyebrow. "What?" "I want you to promise that when this is all over, you won't cut me off completely. I know I don't deserve it, but you're still my sister." I looked at him for a long moment. "I can't promise you anything right now," I said honestly. "But if you're really willing to help me with the truth, then I'll listen." Caleb nodded. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small USB drive. "This has everything," he said. "Bank transfers, fake invoices, even some recordings Dad doesn't know I have. Use it however you want." I took the drive from him. As he turned to leave, he stopped at the door. "Lila," he said quietly, "I know it's too late for apologies, but for what it's worth, I'm sorry. For everything." After he left, I sat on the couch holding the USB drive Caleb had given me. It felt heavier than it should have. This small piece of plastic now held the power to destroy what was left of my parents' reputation and business. For years, they had controlled the narrative, lied about me, and protected each other at my expense. Now, I finally had the weapon I needed to destroy what was left of my parents' reputation, and, for the first time, I realized something important. This wasn't just about the money anymore. This was about finally making them face the consequences of everything they had done, not just to me, but to the entire family. And I was no longer afraid to do it. I sat on my couch for a long time, staring at the USB drive Caleb had given me. It felt heavier than it should have. This small piece of plastic now held the power to destroy what was left of my parents' reputation and business. For years, they had controlled the narrative, lied about me, and protected each other at my expense. Now, I finally had the weapon to turn the tables. But I didn't rush. I spent the next 3 days going through every file on the drive with Miss Vargas. What we found was worse than I expected. My father hadn't just been moving money around, he had been involved in several fraudulent real estate deals over the past 8 years. There were fake invoices, hidden accounts, and even evidence that he had used company funds to pay off personal debts. My mother had signed several documents without fully understanding what she was doing, but she wasn't completely innocent either. She had helped cover things up when questions were raised. "This is enough to destroy them," Miss Vargas said one evening. "If we hand this over to the authorities, your father could face serious prison time. Your mother might get a lighter sentence, but her reputation will be finished." I stayed quiet for a moment. "I don't want them to go to prison," I finally said. Miss Vargas raised an eyebrow. "Then what do you want?" I looked at the documents spread across her table. "I want them to lose everything they care about. Their business, their social standing, their ability to control people. I want them to feel what it's like to have nothing left." Miss Vargas nodded slowly. "Then we'll do this carefully. We'll give them one final chance to back down. If they don't, we'll release enough information to ruin them publicly. The choice will be theirs." 2 days later, my parents received a detailed letter from my lawyer. It didn't just ask them to drop the lawsuit, it laid out everything we had found. It gave them 48 hours to withdraw their case and issue a public apology, or the evidence would be sent to the authorities and major media outlets. They didn't take 48 hours. Within 6 hours, my father called me directly. I was in my kitchen when his name appeared on my screen. I stared at it for a few seconds before answering. "Lila," he said, his voice low and furious. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" "I'm protecting myself," I replied calmly. "Just like you taught me to." "You're going to destroy this family," he snapped. "Do you have any idea what will happen if this information gets out? The business will collapse. People will lose their jobs. Is that what you want?" I felt a cold anger rise in my chest. "No, Dad. What I wanted was a family that loved me. What I got instead was parents who only cared about money and reputation. You tried to steal from me. You lied about me. And now you're surprised that I'm fighting back?" He was quiet for a few seconds. "This isn't you," he said, trying a different approach. "You're not this cruel. Your grandparents wouldn't want this." I let out a short laugh. "Don't bring them into this. They left me the money because they knew exactly who you were. And right now, you're proving them right." My father's voice turned desperate. "Lila, please. We can work something out. We'll drop the lawsuit. We'll issue an apology. Just don't release that information. I'm begging you." I closed my eyes. For a brief moment, I felt the old guilt trying to creep in. But I pushed it down. "You had years to treat me with respect. You chose not to. Now you have to live with the consequences." I hung up. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about my father's voice on the phone. He had sounded scared for the first time in my life. A part of me felt satisfied. Another part of me felt sick. The next morning, my mother showed up at my apartment. She looked like she hadn't slept. Her usually perfect hair was messy and she wasn't wearing any makeup. "Lila, please," she said the moment I opened the door. "You have to stop this. Your father is falling apart. He's been drinking since last night. He's terrified of going to prison." I didn't invite her inside. "You should have thought about that before you tried to take what wasn't yours," I said. Tears filled her eyes. "We made mistakes. I know that. But destroying us won't fix anything. You'll just end up alone with all that money and no family left." I looked at her for a long moment. "I've been alone for most of my life, Mom," I said quietly. "At least now, I'm alone on my own terms." She started crying. "Please, Lila, I'm begging you. Don't do this. We're still your parents." I felt my resolve waver for a second. But then I remembered all the times they had chosen money and status over me. "I'm not going to release everything, but I'm also not going to let you walk away without consequences. You'll drop the lawsuit. You'll issue a public statement admitting that the claims against me were false. And you'll stay out of my life unless I say otherwise." My mother wiped her tears and nodded quickly. "We'll do it. Just please, don't destroy us completely." I closed the door after she left and leaned against it. For the first time since this began, I felt like I was in control.
But I also knew that this wasn't truly over yet. My parents had spent their entire lives protecting their image and their money. People like them don't give up easily, and something told me they still had one last move left. My mother left my apartment that evening with her head down and her shoulders slumped. For the first time in my life, I saw her look truly defeated. But I knew my parents too well to believe they would accept defeat so easily. I was right. The very next morning, my father made one last desperate move. He called a press conference. I was sitting in Miss Vargas's office when the news alert popped up on my phone. My father was standing in front of several cameras, looking serious and composed, while my mother stood beside him with a carefully practiced sad expression. He claimed that I had been mentally unstable for years and that my grandparents had been pressured into changing the will. He even suggested that I had been suffering from emotional distress and was not fit to manage such a large inheritance. It was a bold, disgusting lie. But what shocked me the most was when he said, "We are only trying to protect our daughter from herself." Ms. Vargas looked at me after watching the clip. "He just made a huge mistake," she said calmly. "By going public with false claims about your mental health, he opened himself up to a defamation lawsuit. We can destroy him with this." I stayed quiet for a moment, then spoke. "I don't want to destroy him through more legal battles," I said. "I want to destroy the image he cares about most, his reputation." Ms. Vargas understood immediately. That same afternoon, we released the evidence. Not everything, just enough. We sent carefully selected documents and recordings to 3 major news outlets. Within hours, the story exploded. Headlines read, "Seattle businessman accused of fraud after trying to steal daughter's inheritance. Father who claimed daughter was mentally unstable now faces investigation." The public backlash was brutal. My father's business partners started pulling out. Old friends stopped taking his calls. Social media was filled with people calling him a liar and a thief. Within 2 days, the company he had spent decades building was on the verge of collapsing. My mother called me in a panic. "Lila, please," she cried over the phone. "You're ruining us. The business is finished. We're going to lose everything." I felt strangely calm as I replied. "You tried to take everything from me first," I said. "You lied about me. You dragged my name through the mud. Did you really think I would just let that happen without fighting back?" She started sobbing. "We're your parents. How can you do this to us?" I closed my eyes. "Because you never acted like my parents," I said quietly. "You only acted like my owners, and I'm done being owned." I hung up. 3 days later, my father officially dropped the lawsuit against me. He also issued a short, humiliating public statement admitting that the claims about my mental health were false. But the damage was already done. His business filed for bankruptcy within a month. Most of their so-called friends disappeared. They were forced to sell their house and move into a small condo. The life of luxury and status they had built on lies and manipulation was gone. My brother Caleb distanced himself from them completely. He got a job in another city and rarely spoke to them anymore. He told me once that he was ashamed of how long he had stayed silent. As for me, I finally had peace. I didn't feel the need to celebrate their downfall. I didn't throw it in their faces. I simply moved on with my life.
I used part of the inheritance to start a foundation in my grandparents' name, one that helped elderly people who had been abandoned or financially exploited by their families. It felt like the right way to honor them. One evening, almost 6 months after the will reading, my mother sent me a message. It was the first time she had written to me in weeks. I know you probably won't reply, but I wanted you to know that I'm sorry, truly sorry, for everything. I don't expect forgiveness. I just needed to say it. I read the message several times. Then I replied with one line. I know. I didn't say I forgave her. I didn't say I wanted a relationship. I just acknowledged her words. That was all I was willing to give. If you've ever had your own family try to take what was rightfully yours, drop a comment right now and tell me where you're watching from. I read every single one. You know, after everything that happened, I realized something important. Sometimes the people who claim to love you the most are the ones who will hurt you the deepest when money is involved. And when that happens, you don't owe them your silence or your loyalty. You owe yourself protection. I didn't destroy my parents because I enjoyed their suffering. I did it because I refused to let them destroy me first. And in the end, I didn't just keep the $45 million. I kept my dignity. I kept my peace. And most importantly, I kept the right to choose who gets to be in my life and who doesn't. That, more than any amount of money, is the real inheritance I gave myself.